Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Apyayantu Mamangani Vak Pranashchakshushrotramatho Balamindriyani cha Sarvani Sarvam Brahmopanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Ma Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastu Anirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaha te mai santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so in Kenopanishad, we are now at this place where we're going to enter the third chapter. But before that, let us just review a little bit of the second chapter, the last two verses, and then we'll move forward. So I'm looking at the second chapter, mantra 4 and 5. We'll chant that together. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam yacheda vedi tata satyamasti nachediha vedi mahati vinashti bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitya dhiraha pretyasma lokad amrita bhavanti. So what we saw last week is that if this self, if somebody says, okay, I want to experience the self. So we say in this mantra 2.4, Pratibodha viditam matam. Pratibodha. In every single thought, viditam, the self is known, the self is experienced. Because thoughts only they come to life because they're illumined by consciousness. Without consciousness, a thought cannot exist. It is only in the light of consciousness that we can have something called a thought. So instead of staying stuck in the thought, move over to the light which illumines that thought, or the consciousness which illumines that thought. And that consciousness is the Atman. So Pratibodha viditam matam. It is known in and through every thought. There's no need to go look for it somewhere else. What if someone knows this knowledge, or someone gets this knowledge? Amritatvam hi vindate atmana means they realize their immortal nature. So here it says, by ourselves, we are already immortal. As Atman, we are already immortal. But the catch is we just don't realize this. So one who is able to understand or draw their attention to the source of all thoughts, that person is able to realize their immortal nature. The thought has departure, arrival, coming and going. It is impermanent. It is changing. Every time it's a different nature. But that which illumines it does not have any rising or setting, does not have any change, is always the same as it is. And that I am. And once we realize this, vindate viryam vidyaya, that knowledge that I am this changeless self that remains the same no matter what, the one that illumines all of my thoughts. Though I am not the known, I am not the body which is known, I am the ultimate knower. I'm not the thoughts which are known, I am the ultimate knower. And the dharma or the attributes of the known can never be of the knower. This bottle is known and I am the knower. So this bottle cannot be me, and the attributes of this bottle cannot be me. So what happens is, when we understand that the ultimate knower is different from the known body, the known mind, the known thoughts, there's a lot of freedom. And that freedom comes in the form of fearlessness. Fearlessness. One is fearlessly able to let go of all of these superimpositions. We're not holding on to these superimpositions anymore because we realize it's not us. So why are we holding on to it? It's like that story I told you where somebody was hugging a tree. Somebody was hugging a tree and saying, let me go, let me go. And somebody came by to see him and said, well, you're the one holding onto the tree. Why are you telling the tree to let you go? You have to let go. And that's what it is. We are the ones holding on to these superimpositions. We are the ones identifying with them. And then we're saying, well, how come nothing's happening? Because we're the ones holding. When we let go, then everything happens beautifully. And that fearlessness is also in the sense of being able to do what we need to do. Whenever we identify with the ego, we identify with things like shame, with criticism, with people honoring us or not honoring us, or looking at us in a different way. And hence we're always afraid to start something, to do something. That fear keeps us in that state of, I'm not sure if I should do this. I'm not sure if I start this. What will people say if I do this? What will they say if I don't do it? And our minds are in a constant whirlwind. But for somebody who knows the self, there's absolute fearlessness. There's no sense of, and I'm speaking from the standpoint of, if you look at our great masters, they would start schools, start temples, start institutions. They're not even thinking, what if it fails? What if nobody's here to administer it? What if we don't, get together enough money? What if we don't raise enough money? All of that is dispelled. If it fails, it's okay. And if it succeeds, it's okay. Because it's just a castle in the sky. We're just building castles in the sky for fun. They're just building castles in the sky for fun, and we benefit from them, right? And so there's this sense of fearlessness. And so once Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda was asked, well, what happens if Chinmay mission fails? And he said, well, I'll stand apart and clap. It's okay. If it goes on, it goes on. If it fails, it fails. It's okay. It's okay. He always said that it's Narayana's work. And if Narayana wants it to go on, it will go on. And so there's this sense of fearlessness. This is what we can see in the knower of truth. The fearlessness to let go of these superimpositions, and the fearlessness to venture into such wonderful projects that benefit us without any hesitation. So, vindate viryam vidyaya, and then that person, vindate amritam, finally realizes their immortal nature. And in the last verse of the second chapter, 2.5, it said now the summary of the chapter 2, saying, this is the important point that we've got to get. Iha chet, here, if here, aveti, if here we know this truth, then atasatyamasti, then everything will be well with us. Nachet iha vedin mahati vinashti. But if we don't, it's a great distraction. And this distraction is of a whole magnitude. It's not like a small distraction. It's a huge one. A physical distraction can be something breaks down. It's a physical destruction. Emotional destruction means our emotions are really running wild and we cry, we break down, we scream, we shout. Intellectual destruction can mean, somebody's losing their knowledge or losing their mind or not understanding certain concepts or certain things. We can have, something like destruction of community, where structures or facilities are destroyed. And so there's destruction at every single level. This kind of destruction is lifetimes. Lifetimes. We will be in this cycle, life after life after life. And that is the great destruction. Because we don't get destroyed, we have to come back again and again and again to go through this. So mahati vinashtihi, it's a great destruction indeed if we don't gain this knowledge, because we have to go through this again and again and again. It's like the field of life. Until and unless we learn something, we have to go through that experience. So if at any point we're wondering, why are those people in our lives? Why is that circumstance in my life? It's because there's a lesson I need to learn. And until and unless I learn that lesson, that's not going to go away. And that's the way life is. So it's a great destruction. It's a great destruction, and it's a great misuse of our potential. We have not fulfilled what we were set out to do. And who gets it? Dhiraha, the subtle intellects, the people with subtle intellects, vichitya, those who have been able to clearly see this truth. Bhuteshu, in all beings, not just in themselves, in all beings. Pretyasma lokat, having left their identification with this world of senses, amrita bhavanti, they realize their immortal nature. So now one might think, okay, the Upanishad is over. And in many, the teaching, the Brahma Vidya, the teaching of truth, yes, we can say is really, really emphasized on chapters 1 and 2. Now, chapter 3 explores this idea of, you said that it's such a great destruction if we don't realize this truth. And I, as a seeker, want to realize this truth. So what is the kind of effort that I have to put forth to do this? Please remind me, because I don't want to miss it. And so the beauty of the Upanishads is, in the first 2 chapters, it gives the teaching in these mantras and very succinctly. But now sometimes our minds are, not that subtle. And so the Upanishad says, now I'm going to give you the teaching in the form of a story. It's the same exact teaching, and we will see, but I'm going to give it to you in the form of a story. And I hope that by this story, you get the point of the kind of person that's needed to realize this knowledge. So this really talks about the adhikari. Who is the student that can really get this knowledge? So we'll start. In this section, I don't think you'll need to repeat after me, because it's all story type. So I will chant and then I will tell the story. And then after the story, we'll go through the meaning, the deeper significance of the story. Okay? So now we are in chapter 3, verse 1 of the Kenopanishad. Brahmaha devebhyo vijigye tasyaha brahmano vijaye devaha amahiyanta te ekshanta asmakam eva ayam vijayaha asmakam eva ayam mahima iti. So what happens here? Here the Devatas and the Asuras were having a argument, a fight. The Devatas and the Asuras. And the Asuras were winning. The Asuras were winning and the Devatas were losing. And so the beautiful thing about the Devatas is that whenever they're down and out, they invoke God. And, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that there are 4 kinds of people who invoke God. Artha, the one who's really, really in distress. Artharthi, the one who's seeking wealth and pleasure. Jignasu, the one who is curious to know about God. And Jnani, the one who knows God and just revels in God. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, in this verse, Bhagavan says they are all good people because they are actually invoking me. So God is very happy when we invoke God, even if it's a time of distress, because Bhagavan is hoping that as time passes by, we'll invoke God out of curiosity. And when we get that knowledge or gain that knowledge, we'll invoke God because it's our nature. So here, Brahma means Saguna Brahma or Ishvara. So whenever the word Brahma is used in this chapter in particular, it means Ishvara. So the Devatas and Asuras were fighting, Devatas were losing, and so they invoked God. Brahma ha devebhyo vijagye. And so because they invoked God, they won the battle. They won this battle. Tasyaha brahmano vijaye devaha. So because of that God, because of God, they won this battle. But ahamiyanta, but they were so elated. They forgot God. So what is the ego? The ego is forgetfulness of God. Forgetfulness of God is the birth of the ego. So they forgot God and they said, we won, we did it. Te ekshanta, they thought, asmakam evayam, they thought we are the ones who won. We are the ones who won. The victory belongs to us. And so what happens now in the second mantra, tadhaisham vijagnyau tebhyoha pradhur babhuva tanna vyajanata kimidam yaksham iti. So tadhaisham vijagnyau. So God knew their vanity. God knew their vanity and said, listen, these are the Devatas. These are the Devatas, and I know they mean well. They must have just gotten lost somewhere. And this is what happens when we get grace from God. We get lost. We get lost in our own maze, thinking that we're the ones who did everything. So God said, let me just teach them a lesson because I know they're open to it. Asuras may not be open to learning a lesson, but he said, I know the Devatas are open to a lesson, so let me go and teach them a lesson. Tebhyaha, so before them, pradur babhuva, before them, he appeared. And tanna vyajanata, they didn't know who was this person because God appeared as a yaksha. Yaksha means an adorable form. So he appeared as an adorable form. And so they were thinking, Kimidam yakshamiti, who is this adorable form? And so now, also imagine all of the Devatas are having a party and they're questioning, who is this adorable form? Te agnir bruvan, te agnim abruvan, jata veda, etad vijanihi, kim etad yakshamiti, tatha iti. So they said to Agni, Agni is the fire devata, Jata Veda, you are the all-knower of everything. Because of course, if you want to ask something, you have to first praise them. So they tell Agni, the fire devata, the god of fire, that you are all-knowing. And now you go and find out, Etad Vijanihi, who is this yaksha? Who is this yaksha that's appearing here? He looks so adorable, so bright, so wonderful. Nobody knows who he is. Who is this yaksha appearing here? So Agni said, Tathati, I'll go. And so Agni goes to the yaksha. And now he says, now in mantra 4, Tad abhyadruvata, tam abhyavadat, ko asi iti, agnirva aham asmi iti abravit, jata veda va aham asmi iti. So tad abhyadravata. So he went with real speed because he's excited to know who this person is. And Agni means agre gachati, the one who goes first. So Agni goes first. And tam abhyavadata. So tam abhyavadat. To him, the Yaksha asked Agni, who are you? Who are you? And Agni said, well, I'm Agni. I mean, don't you know who I am? I'm Agni. And I am known as Jata Veda, the one who's all-knowing. So this is who I am. And so, tasmin, now in number 5, tasmin tvai kim viryam iti apidagam sarvam daheya yad idam pritivyam iti. So he said, the Yaksha said, in you, tasmit, tvai, in you, in that nature, kim viryam, what is the viryam? What is your strength? And this Agni said, well, api idam sarvam daheyam, even this I can burn. Pritivyam iti, anything that's in this earth, I can burn. I can burn anything to ashes. This is what Agni said. This is what I can do. And so, in number 6, tasmai trinam nidadau etad daheti tad upapreyaya sarvajavena tanna shashaka dagdhum sa tata eva nivavritte naitad ashakam vignatum yad etat yaksham iti. What happens here? So to that tasmai, to that Agni, trinam nidadau. So he gave a blade of grass. Trinam means blade of grass. And he said, daha, burn this blade of grass. And tatupa preyaya. So he went there. He dashed there. Sarvajavena with his full vigor, full speed. But he couldn't burn this blade of grass. So imagine this Agni Devata who says he can burn everything. He can burn earth. He can burn everything. He could not burn this blade of grass. And satata eva nivavritte. He returned. He went back to the other Devatas. And he didn't tell the other Devatas what happened because he was ashamed, right? So he didn't tell them what happened. He just said, I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out who this Yaksha is. And so they all looked at each other. They said, okay, well, we have to send somebody else. We have to send someone else to know who this Yaksha is. So now in number 7, Atha Vayum Abruvan Vaya Vetad Vijanihi Kim Etad Yaksham Iti Katheti. So they said to Vayu, the god of wind, now you are Vayu. You're the one that carries everything, moves everything in space. You go and find out who this Yaksha is. Go and find out who this adorable Yaksha is. So it says Vanat, Gamanat, Vayu, because it carries fragrance. It moves in space. It's called Vayu. So Tad Abhyadravata. So Vayu went there. Tad Abhyadravata. Tam abhyavadat. Ko asiti. So even before Vayu, the wind god, could ask the Yaksha said, who are you? And so Vayu said, I'm Vayu. Vayurva aham asmiti abravit. I am Vayu. Don't you know me? Matarishva va aham asmiti. And they call me Matarishva. Means Matari akashe shvayati. The one who moves in space. They call me Matarishva. And so, okay, tasmin tvai kim viryamiti. Now in number 9 now, in you, what is the strength? What is the strength in you? Api idagam sarvam adadiya. He said, well, I can blow everything away. I can blow everything away. Yad idam pritivyam iti. Anything, even in this earth, I can blow away. So the Yaksha said, okay, well, if that's what you can do, tasmai trinam didadhau. So he gave him again the blade of grass. He said, etad adatsva iti. This, blow it, blow this away. Tad upapreyaya. So having gone there, upapreya, having approached Sarvajavena with his full speed, he tried and tried to blow this blade of grass. Tanna shashaka datum. He could not blow it. Satata eva nivavritte. So he left from there. He left from there and he said, Naitad ashakam vignatum yad etad yaksham iti. I could not know this yaksha. He went to all the devatas and he said, I could not know this yaksha. And so now the devatas were all puzzled what to do. And so in the next mantra now, they say, okay, well, let's send Indra. Atha Indram Abruvan. Bhagavan, they call him Bhagavan to praise him, which means Balavan, someone who is really strong. Etad vijanihi, kim etad yaksham iti. So you go. They said, now Indra, you go and find out who's this yaksha. He says, Tatha iti. Okay, I will go. Tad abhyadravata. He hastened there. Tasmat tiro dadhe. But when he got there, the yaksha disappeared. The yaksha disappeared. And so he was just stunned. He said, my God, I didn't even get to see this yaksha. In number 12, sa tasmin eva akashe. In that same space where that yaksha disappeared, striyam ajagama. There was a woman there, right? And she came to know what happened. Bahu shobhamanam umagam. And she was bahu shobhamana. She was like so radiant and so beautiful. And her name was Uma Haimavati. So this was Mother Parvati. Uma is one of her names. It's the feminine form of actually Om. Om is A-U-M. So Uma is the feminine form of Om. And Haimavati means the daughter of Himavan. Himavan is the Himalayas. So she symbolizes knowledge, or Mother Shruti. She is the one, because knowledge comes out of the quiet caves of the mountains. Meaning when we are very quiet inside, that's when knowledge really dawns upon us. And she's also called Haimavati because she's steadfast. Knowledge only comes to one who is really steadfast on this path. On this path, so many things can throw us off. They say it's like a razor's edge. So many things can throw us off. But the one who's steadfast on this path of knowledge is called Haimavati. So she came as Brahmavidya, as Mother Shruti. And Tagam Hovacha. And to her, Kim etad yaksham iti. To her, Indra asks, who is this yaksha? And that's how the third kanda, the third chapter concludes. Now, let's see it's like who is that yaksha? And she's going to tell who that yaksha is in the fourth kanda, in the fourth chapter. But let's see now what the meaning of all of this is and why this story actually takes place. So now, as I said, this story takes place because to emphasize what is required by the one who is seeking this truth. So the first thing is the Devatas and Asuras, they resemble these forces in us. The Asuric forces are negative qualities and our Devic forces are our divine qualities. And somehow they're always in a battle. They're always in a battle, right? It's always one part of me who's trying to tell the other part of me, to do something the right way. And when I'm losing, let's say the divine part of me is losing, what do? We invoke God's grace. We invoke God's grace. We say, please, please, please help me. And then God does come through and God does help us. But at the same time, we get proud. We get proud and we forget God. We forget all of the effort that God has done. We forget God and we think everything is our own doing. So this is the first fall of a seeker, is this pride. This pride is the fall of a seeker. With pride, we will never know God or this truth, because pride makes us think that we know everything and we can do everything. But in reality, we cannot. And so that's why in the story, you'll see that even the fire, Agni, could not burn the blade of grass. Why? Because he failed to recognize the fire of the fire, which is consciousness. Without consciousness, you cannot do anything. Even Vayu, the wind god, tried to blow the blade of grass, but he failed to recognize the wind of the wind, which is consciousness, which is the divine. So when we fail to recognize that, that is the first fall of a seeker. No matter how much we say we do, there's always that consciousness which illumines everything, without which nothing can function. So really, what do we do? So that is the first fall of a seeker. Then the second fall of a seeker is that we try now to objectify God. So, or the truth. I'm using God here because in this chapter, God is represented. It's the Saguna Brahma. Agni, the god of fire, is represents all of the karma indriyas. Fire, or Agni, is the deity of speech. So that's why they say you have fiery speech, deity of speech. So speech represents all the organs of action. So when we try to know God through our organs of action, we fail. We're trying to comprehend God through speech. We're trying to comprehend God through some kind of touch, some kind of grasp, all these organs of action, locomotion, etc. We're trying to comprehend God. But in that, we will fail. We fail. We're not able to comprehend God because God cannot be comprehended by that. And also, another flaw of Agni is that, and this is also of Vayu and Indra, is that, they go with such pride that I am Agni, I am this person. The way to go to God is with utter humility, that I am no one. I don't know anything. Now you please tell me. I'm an empty vessel. I'm not a full vessel. With with Agni and Vayu going like that, with a full vessel, I know everything. I'm a know-it-all. We can't gain knowledge. People will say, well, if you know everything, then don't count. There's nothing we can teach you. You help yourself. So the truth will only come when we become empty vessels. So we become empty vessels, and when we don't try to grasp the truth with our organs or limited organs. And the other thing also is that when Agni, or the fire god, failed to blow that blade of grass, he did not say, who are you? He did not question. He didn't inquire. He didn't think you must be so great and I bow down to you and I surrender to you. I want to know you. He didn't do all of that. He just left. That's another flaw of a seeker. When we're defeated, we can't take it. We're defeated by anybody, we can't take it, so we leave. But if we just bow down and say, here is someone who knows more than me. Here is someone in this regard who's better than me, then how much would we learn? So this is where we fall as seekers. And the same thing happened with the wind god. And also, by the way, Agni, or the fire god, at least he could talk it out, right? And tell everybody, you know what? I messed up. I messed up. Now, Vayu, you're going, don't mess up. But he didn't want to exhibit his flaw. That's another thing we don't want to do, right? Like if we have a flaw, if we did something wrong, we want to hide it. And we'll say, yeah, you go see for yourself. But he could have warned him and said, listen, this happened to me. Let's better try a different way to figure this out. But he didn't do that. So all of these things, it seems like a simple story that we could tell to any child, but it has such deep implications if we really look into it. Then we come to Vayu, and Vayu represents now the Jnanendriyas, or the sense organs, organs of knowledge, because Vayu, or the wind god, is the presiding deity of touch. So the sense of sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, all of that is represented by Vayu. And again, we try to grasp God by these things, by seeing. I saw something, or I'm hearing, it's a sound that I'm hearing, or it's something that I'm seeing. We try to again limit God and try to grasp God through our sense organs or organs of knowledge. But God cannot be grasped that way. And so therefore, Vayu also fails. And with the same flaws, Vayu failed with the same flaws, that he was so proud about himself and that he did not surrender, knowing that he could not blow that leaf. He did not surrender and try to find out who that yaksha is. And he also, when he went back, he didn't warn anybody. It is said that Vayu and Agni just looked at each other and winked, but he didn't warn anyone. And so they said, now Indra. So now Indra is the king of the Devatas. So Indra here means the mind, the king of all of the sense organs, organs of action, organs of knowledge. That's called Indra, Indriyanam Devaha. So the king of all of the sense organs, organs of knowledge and action is Indra. So that represents the mind. And so now Indra apparently was the one who was the most proud. He was the proudest of all because he was the king of the Devatas. And so he goes there. And when he goes there, the Yaksha disappears. Why does the Yaksha disappear? Because the Yaksha says, I'm not even going to stay for this Indra. He's just too proud. He's too proud, so I'm going to leave. He's not even worth it. It's too proud. So knowledge will not come with pride at all. With anybody who has pride means that they do not have knowledge. Because the very aspect of knowledge is humility. Vidya, that knowledge gives humility, vinaya. It gives humility. And so he disappears. But now what makes Indra unique is that Indra didn't disappear. The Yaksha disappeared, but Indra didn't disappear. Indra waited there, stayed there, and he realized his mistake. He said, I became too proud. I missed it, but I'm not going to give up. And this is many of us seekers. At sometimes we miss this knowledge. We miss it because our minds are not ready. And so we give up and we say, this is not for me. I can't do it anymore. I'm not, we have a bad day we don't get a discourse, something doesn't strike us. And we say, you know what? No, I'm giving up. But Indra was not like that. Indra stayed. Indra stayed and waited. And he said, there must be something. There must be something. And I'm just going to wait and see. And so he kept looking at from where the Yaksha came, kept looking. And because of that mukshutva, that desire of Indra, and that devotion of Indra to know, then Uma Haimavati, as Mother Shruti came to him. She came to him and blessed him because now finally his mind was ready. And she came to him. And when she came to him, he inquired. He asked, he said, now who is this Yaksha? Who is this Yaksha? So that is the glory of how, that is what's required in a seeker. That patience to know, the recognition of our faults, that humility, and that deep inquiry. And only then one is blessed with knowledge. And so now what we will do is we will maybe just read the first mantra now in the 4th chapter, so that so that we don't leave anybody hanging. We'll read the first mantra of the 4th chapter, and then I'll give you a little bit intro on the 4th chapter. Okay. So now chapter 4 opens with Shruti Mata, Uma Hemavati. And she is now going to give this upadesha, or this teaching, to Indra. She's finally going to reveal who this yaksha is. So in chapter 4, the first mantra, Sa Brahmheti ho vacha. So she answered, and she said, Brahman. She exclaims, Brahman, that was Brahman. That was Brahma. Brahmano va etad vijaye mahiyadvam iti. And she says, it's because of Brahma. Brahma again here means, again, that Saguna Ishvara, that Brahman with form, Ishvara. It's because of that Brahma, Vijaye, that you all won. Mahiyadvam iti, and that you have gained greatness. It's because of that Brahma. Tato ha eva vidyachakara brahmeti. Then he understood. Vidachakara. Then he understood. He knew that that was Brahma. That was God. So this is the teaching that she gives him. Now, how chapter 4 will go, the flow, is that chapter 4 is, so now we've seen the reason for chapter 3. It's really to give us a sense of who this student is, who's capable to receive this knowledge. What is chapter 4 for? Well, chapter 4 really deals with how to prepare that mind. Because either there are those who are not, get the teaching, but not get it. Sometimes that's what happens to us. We understand this, and yet we don't understand it. There's some things that are blurred, some things that are fussy. And in this, there's nothing wrong with the teaching. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the teaching. But what has to really happen is the mind has to be sharpened. It has to be sharpened. And so in the 4th chapter, it's going to address these problems, because this is what happens to a seeker. After hearing the Upanishads, there's always a question that comes to the seeker. I get it, but I don't get it. I get it, but just, it's like, how do you do this? How do you live with this? It's just too hard. So the Upanishads always have this section where they help us through these deep, subtle practices called upasanas. There's also some karma, and there's also the mention of divine qualities. So chapter 4 will be all about how to tune ourselves to this great knowledge. It is like, let us say, someone goes to a doctor. Someone goes to a doctor, and the doctor says, okay, now there is something wrong there. There's something, let's say there's something wrong with your body. And the doctor gives you the report, right? And it's all the test results. It has all these kinds of things of test results. You look at the test result, you don't understand anything because you're not a doctor. So you look at it, you're like, I don't get any of this. This is just too much. But then if you give it to your friend who's a doctor, then your friend will say, oh, okay, this is what it means. It means this, that. You're okay. You just have to change your diet. You have to take these vitamins and this and that, and everything will be okay. So what happens is it's the same report that the doctor gave. It's the same report. But just to us, it was like, it was totally different. We didn't understand it. It was English, but we didn't understand it. But to somebody who's capable of reading that language, it was so crystal clear. So in the same way, Upanishads are like that. It's the exact same teaching. So in the beginning to us, it will be all a blur because we're not capable of reading and understanding that kind of depth of language. I'm not just saying, I mean, it's in English here, but the depth of it, the subtlety of it, we're not capable. But when we work with our minds, then we become like that friend. And at a later point of time, we can pick up the same exact thing and we'll really be able to understand the subtlety of it. So chapter 4 focuses on that. And that chapter 4 we will take up next week so that we can go on one zone. We'll start the chapter 4, we'll go on one zone and take that up. Okay? So I'll say the closing prayer, and then if there are any questions, then we can take that, and then we'll sit quietly. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Okay, pause here.